placing the circles over the realistic shape.
And if you love me, but you never let me know.
Inside the shape. And I'm just kind of moving them
But the
around
roof is all
to catch the prettiest part of the pattern. Then I just lightly mark around the circle, just going a little past the edge, and then I cut it out.
Yeah, I'm about to take the clothes out
After
and
that,
fold them, and then I'm going to put another load in
and
it. So
carefully place it right on top of the round.
Whoa, what's going on here? Why is it out there?
Because it wasn't.
You
I
pulled
just
it out?
take my time here,
What'd you do when you
smoothing
pulled
it
it
out as I go and making sure there's no bubbles.
Oh, it's a connect.
Yep.
You were checking.
Yeah, because
Next, I'm taking my little
it didn't
sander
sound
and
like it was
working the
going
opening.
through.
I make sure to sand downward only, otherwise it can scratch up some of that design, and we
Well,
don't
here.
want that. And this stuff really gives it a nice clean edge all the way around. I'll be sealing it with some Mod Podge. This one's from Dollar Tree, and I'm using the glossy one. I did test
They're
out both
not?
the matte and the gloss, and you know they look
Come
pretty
on.
similar in the finish. So
I ran
just
for
went
2
with the glossy.
hours and
They do
something's
also
still
have a
on.
dishwasher safe version, which is definitely a more durable finish.
They felt
I'll
right
be adding
for
some
me.
cork on the bottom for a little extra grip. I get these cork sheets at Dollar Tree, and you can definitely cut out a full circle to cover the
Doesn't
entire
that mean they're
bottom.
already
But
very
I
dry?
decided to just cut a few small strips and place them right across the bottom instead. Quick and easy, and it still does the job. I'll be letting it dry overnight and then giving it a quick
Not
spray
if you're
with
getting
a spray
wrinkles out.
sealer. And this one is all done.
But if you put clothes in the dryer and put it on very dry, that means that's what you want to have.
Okay, is it hot right already?
Dollar
Can you
Tree
see
has
if
these
the-
adorable decorative
Can you see if
pieces
something's
where
blocking the
I
hose?
really love the
The hose,
pattern
no, I
of
checked
colors. And for
I
this
took the
project,
hood
I
off. The
grabbed
hose
a
is
plate
fine.
and a
The
bowl.
dust is
And
fine.
just like the previous
If
DIY, there
anything,
are so many options.
it could be blocked to
You can
something
place a
within
bowl
the
below,
rest of the
and I
system.
love how the base matches.
But why would that make the clothes
Or
not dry?
place a candlestick in between.
Because
This
if it
is
can't
another
deliver
$1
the
cheaper
moist
candlestick,
air
and
out and
it's
it gets
just so
backed up,
dainty and
then
pretty.
all the moist air
But for
remains.
this
It's not
project,
dry
I
air.
wanted to add some wood elements to it. I'll be using a couple of these 1x2
Okay, can you call them,
wood from Dollar Tree.
please?
I'll be making a wood base, and I'll be
'Cause look at how much
putting
laundry that
pieces
is.
into a cross. And so I mark the length of the plate, and I add a little more above that just to give some cushion. Well, you also need a total of 3 1x2s, and here are the measurements that I trim them to. To assemble, I lay the wood pieces flat and then glue the 2, 4, and 5/8 pieces towards the center sides of the 10-inch piece to form a cross. I'm using Titebond quick and quickly for this project. For the smaller pieces, I'll be gluing them.
I said the clothes aren't dry.
So I'm just adding a little bit of glue on the smaller pieces. You can also apply it on the 4 ends of the cross first, and then attach the smaller
Yes.
pieces. You do have a little time before
Yeah,
the
but I don't
piece
think
dries
it's the
completely.
dryer.
So
I think it's
assemble
something
and
with the
let that
vent
dry. Now,
system.
aside from painting or staining, this is pretty much done, and you can definitely leave it as is. But you know, I think
Okay.
this would look even better with a little elevation and height. So I had a few options with what I
We don't-
had on hand.
No,
First,
air is going out of it.
5-inch pine wood. Now I really like the way
What do you
this
mean by
looks,
the
especially
outside
with the
vent?
plate on top. But you know, I had this whole other plan for it already, which you'll see in a minute. Instead, I decided to go with this hexagon shaped wood from Dollar Tree, which I already had. And you know what? It looked just as awesome on top.
Hi.
So I just applied some glue to attach them together.
Do you know
I
where
made
the
sure
air
it's
comes
centered.
out on the outside of the house?
Now for part 2 of this project, I'll be making a base for the bowl. So for that, I'll be using a 5-inch round pine wood and 4 tumbling tunnel.
It could be one of the
Okay,
vents
so all
down
I'll be
here.
doing for this
It could be
simple
on the-
base is
up
glue the
on the
block
top
equally
end.
spaced out all around. I just add a little bit of glue on the block, and then I just attach that onto the sides of the wood round. And this wood round is just a perfect size for the bowl. Once the bases have completely dried, I give them a light sanding to remove any glue in the joints that may have seeped out. I'll be staining them, and I'll be using this gel stain from Deco Art in the shade Walnut. So I'm using a brush to apply the color. Now, even though I did lightly sand over the hexagon, the color did go on a bit spotty in some areas. I don't know, maybe it was some sticky residue or some grease left behind, but whatever it was, I did go back to try to correct it. I tried sanding it a bit and then re-staining it just so it blended better. I do apply the stain in small sections, and then I wipe it down immediately before it dries so that you can see that wood grain even more underneath. So I just continue applying the stain all over in small sections and then wiping it down. You can paint or stain this any color you like. You could choose a lighter stain or paint it a beautiful olive color. The choice is yours, so get creative and make it match your style perfectly. With a smaller base, I stain it that same walnut stain, applying with a brush and then wiping it down immediately before it dries. I also made sure to apply it on the sides and the blocks. Seal it with your preferred sealer, and this DIY is done. The wood just complements the ceramic plate beautifully, and because the plate and bowl isn't glued down, you can easily switch it out anytime. Alright, now that we've got our creative juices flowing, let's see what else we can create with these baskets. For the next DIY, I'll be using this cream colored woven basket, and this one is slightly bigger than the ones I previously used. I'll also be using some nautical rope from Dollar Tree as well. And I'm going to make this basket even bigger. So the first thing, I'm going to get the rope and I'm going to wrap it along the top of the basket. You'll see where the straw basket ends on the top, and that's where I'm going to place it.
Let's get a clothesline going outside.
I'm just going to continue wrapping along the top, which will extend the size of the basket. So I'm just working in sections, applying some glue and adhering the nautical rope on top. Now, I really love doing this simple hack. It's super easy, but it adds such a nice detail. Now, I'm just using one of these Dollar Tree nautical ropes, but you can definitely add another one if you want it to be even larger. It blends nicely, and you have a pretty sturdy base because of that woven basket right under. I'm going to wrap the nautical rope about 4 times around, and I'm going to cut an end directly above where I first started. That way it's pretty even all around. And then I just glue that in place. Now I love how this looks, and you can leave it like that, but I'm going to add some fun decorative details to this. So to do that, I'll be using some white yarn and a plastic yarn needle. Now I like using these plastic yarn needles for this project because it's flexible, that you can use whatever you have on hand to weave the yarn through the rope. I'm going to be cutting out about 9 pieces of the string, each of them about 3 feet in length. And so I string through one of the cut yarns through the needle and I tie a little knot to hold it in place. And then I just start wrapping it around the rope. And so I poke through or push through the needle right under the top first row of rope, and I loop it over, pulling it all the way through, leaving about 1 inch or so of the end, and I'm just holding that end in place horizontally towards the right. You can dab some glue if you want, but I'm just going to be wrapping the yarn around it, and that will hold it in place. So I just continue looping that yarn over that first row of rope, and I do that 4 times. Then I move on to looping the yarn over 2 rows, and I do that 4 times as well. After that, I loop it 4 times again over 3 rows, and you can already see a beautiful pattern forming. After that, I just mirror the previous loops, looping 4 over 2 rows, and then 4 over the top single row. Once you're done with the pattern, you can hot glue it in place, but what I like to do is tuck that inside the loops so that you can't see it. And then I just continue on making the same pattern. I do space them about 3/4 inch to 1 inch apart. Now you can get really creative with these patterns. You can experiment with different combinations and the spacing. I'm starting with a sequence, but feel free to adjust it to your liking. However you decide to do it, I think it will add a really nice detail to the basket. It's all about what looks good to you. If you want a bolder look, you can use thicker yarn or even double up the layers. If you prefer something more subtle, you can space out the wraps a bit more. Either way, it's going to give your basket a unique and handmade touch. Now, a quick tip, if you decide to add this detail, you really don't need to go too heavy on the hot glue because the loops will hold it in place, and that will just make it a little easier to push the needle through. And there you have it. Our basket is all done, and I'm really loving how this one turned out. The yarn adds such a beautiful texture and gives the basket a beautiful custom look. For the next DIY, I was inspired by these blue terracotta clay vases from Pottery Barn. I love the soft textured look they have, and I thought it'd be fun to try to make my own version using Dollar Tree supplies. I'll be using one of their glass vases with a flare top. First, I gave it a good cleaning to make sure it was free of any dust or oils. Then you can spray paint it with primer first to help the paint stick even better, but I'm going to go ahead and paint it directly using some chalk paint mixed with baking soda to give it that nice textured clay-like finish I'm going for. I'm starting off with some white chalk paint and adding a good amount of baking soda. I want the mixture to be pretty thick, so I just keep adding baking soda until it gets nice and chunky. I'm using a round sponge brush to apply it, and I'm just pouncing it all over the vase. These sponge brushes are honestly my favorite for this kind of project because the paint goes on super thick and it gives great coverage really fast. I usually only need no more than 2 coats to get it fully covered. I just love all the texture this gives. That paint mixture really makes it feel like a clay or pottery piece. And once everything is dry, I'll be lightly brushing on some blue. Now I wanted the blue to be a little softer, so I added some white to lighten it up. After mixing up the blue color, I grabbed the synthetic paintbrush from Dollar Tree. It's perfect for this part because I really want to see those big brush strokes show up. So I'm just dipping the brush into the paint and lightly brushing it across the vase, working horizontally all the way around. So I just keep working my way around, adding light strokes until I like how it's looking. And if it goes on a little too heavy in some areas, that's totally fine because after that, I'm going to go back over any harsh areas with some white paint to soften it up. So I just keep going back and forth with the blue and the white until I like the way it looks. Once I'm happy with the finish, I just do a quick spray of sealer to protect it, and this one's done. For the next DIY, I'm using the 6-square wood piece. I just wanted to deepen the color a bit, so I'm mixing together that same warm neutral combo from earlier and thinning it out with a little water so it goes on like a stain. So I'm just brushing the paint on and wiping it down immediately. Acrylic paint dries really fast, so I'm just making sure to wipe it down right away. And I'm applying the paint on all sides, top and bottom. A few videos back, I made some DIYs using these beautiful rub-on transfers I found on Amazon, and I'll link that below. And I had a bunch left over, and I thought they'd look so stunning on the wood. So I really like this section with the flowers and the butterfly, and it has that beautiful vintage look. It's so pretty. So I'm just trimming that section out, and I want to make sure it fits nicely on the wood square. To apply it, I just peel off the white backing paper and place the transfer onto the wood. At this point, I can still move it around a bit to get it in the right spot before it sticks. It comes with a little wooden stick, so I start by rubbing over the whole design a few times to help it stay in place. Now, I thought I should trim out that overhang before continuing because I didn't want any of that transfer hanging off the edges or tearing as I peeled it back. So I focused on one corner, rubbing firmly and slowly lifting the top plastic sheet as I go. If any part doesn't transfer, I just lay it back down and rub it again until it sticks completely. Then I just lightly tap over the whole design with my fingers, pressing it down gently to make sure every little part is fully stuck to the wood and nothing is lifting or peeling up. There was a little piece of the transfer I trimmed off earlier, and I decided to use it to fill in a spot that looked a bit empty to help balance everything. I'm adding some wooden beads to the bottom to give it a little lift, and just hot gluing one to each of the 4 corners underneath. And finally, to seal and protect the transfer, I'm brushing on some Mod Podge over the top. And that's it. This one's all done, and I love how it turned out. Alright, this DIY is a super quick one. I grabbed 3 of Dollar Tree's black pillar candle pedestals for this. They always have a bunch of different styles. You'll probably see some white ones too, so just grab whatever 3 you like best, as long as the 3 match. I'm also going to be using a couple of these dark votive candle holders. I just really love the look of these. For the pedestals, I'm gluing 2 of them together to make one long one. I'm just lining up the bottoms, adding some glue, and sticking them together. Super easy. And then I'm placing the glass candle holder on top. You can either permanently glue them in place with E6000 or just add a little hot glue so you can mix and match and pop it out whenever you want to change it up. And because Dollar Tree has a big variety of votive candle holders, there's so many different ways you can switch them up for a few dollars. For this DIY, I'll be using several of these greenery bushes from Dollar Tree. I'll use about 3 for this project. I really love how they look, and I think they're definitely some of the more realistic looking ones. I'll also be using one of Dollar Tree's large woven baskets. I thought this size was perfect, but you can definitely use any basket or tray you have on hand. For the first look, I'll be using some battery-operated pillar candles. I got the 2 larger ones at Walmart a while back, and I wish I picked up a smaller one to create a trio for this project. But since I don't have one, I'll be using Dollar Tree small white pillar candles instead. And I'm placing the 3 pillar candles in the center of the basket. I'll be placing the greenery bush around the candles, and I'm just bending the greenery to follow the shape of the basket. So I'm just laying these down, and I'm using 3 for this, but if you want a fuller look, you can definitely add 1 or 2 more. The greenery already has a nice full look on its own, so 3 felt just right for me. Next, I wanted to add some of these white flowers from Dollar Tree to the greenery. I thought I would just pull off a few and scatter them all around to add a little extra fullness and texture. It's such a simple step, but it really makes the whole arrangement come together nicely. You can totally make this as colorful as you want. I'm keeping it simple with the white flowers for a soft, neutral look, but this would also be gorgeous with some pinks and purples, or even little yellow flowers for a bright, cheerful pop. Another way you can style this is by placing the candles inside some cylinder vases, which just adds a beautiful touch. I'm using 3 vases from Dollar Tree in different heights to add some variation. Now, I started with my original 3 candles in the vases, but a couple of them ended up being too big, so I decided to switch to 3 smaller pillar candles that I got at Dollar Tree. I'm adding white rocks to the bases first. Since the bases are different heights, I want to adjust the candles so they're not all the same level. And these white rocks are from Dollar Tree, but you can also use Epsom salt or some shells or even wooden beads. I think any of those would work perfectly. And so now I just place the candles in the vases and I set them in the center of the basket. I love how simple yet elegant this looks. It really came together nicely. For this DIY, you're going to need 1 bamboo cutting board from Dollar Tree and a couple 12-inch 1x2s, which you can find in the Dollar Tree wood section. I'm going to be making a hanging wooden wall pocket. I'm going to measure the height and I mark where I want to trim it. So for this, I'm trimming so that I have 2 at about 7 3/4 of an inch and 1 at 4 inches for that bottom horizontal section. So here they are, trimmed and ready to go. And I just use a miter box and saw. Dollar Tree wood is really easy to cut through. I'll be painting the wood with this chalk paint from Waverly in the shade Sandstone. So I'm just taking note of the areas where I'll be applying the glue, and I make sure to avoid painting those areas. I'll also be painting a small section on the front of the bamboo, so I tape about 2 3/4 of an inch from the bottom, also making sure to tape off the sides. And I'm just making sure that there's no bubbles. I'm just pushing down on the tape because I don't want any of that paint getting underneath. Because I want full coverage, I'll be applying the paint with a round sponge brush. For the first layer, I start by brushing or dragging the sponge brush downward away from the tape. After that, I just start pouncing the brush all over, still being extra careful around that taped area, applying light coats, and just pouncing very lightly as well. So far, no streaks, and it's going on evenly. I also make sure to paint the sides. Once that's completely painted, I carefully remove the tape, and thank goodness the paint didn't bleed through. To assemble, I flip the board over and then I apply some glue. I'm using Titebond Quick and Thick, and I apply that on the narrow, unpainted sides of the trimmed 1x2s. And then I just attach them onto the board. Now, to make sure they dry equally spaced, I take the extra 4-inch cut wood and I place that towards the center. And then I just attach the rest of the 1x2s so that it forms a U shape. I do clamp them together and I let that dry completely. To seal, I took it outside and I used a spray sealer from Krylon. To hang, I'll be attaching a couple triangle hangers using a ruler to make sure they're placed evenly. And that's it for this one. You can place some flowers or greenery stems. You can also make a matching pair. I really love how this turned out. Now, while I was at Dollar Tree, one of their napkins caught my attention. It had a beautiful blue tropical design, and I wanted to use it for this project. I also picked up their clear decorative cake plate with a scallop edge. First thing I'm going to do is give the plate a coat of white acrylic paint, and I'm using Apple Barrel's white. I'll also apply the white paint on the back, and I only apply it up to that scalloped area. I'm going to decoupage the napkin onto the plate, so first I'll remove that extra layer behind the napkin and separate it. To make it easier to work with, I place a plate on top of the napkin and I trim off some of that excess. I leave about 1.5 inches of extra napkin all around. Once I got that cut, I'll be applying some Mod Podge all over the top surface of the plate. I just drizzle that right on top and then I use a brush to spread it out. Now another option, you can also skip painting the plate, and this will give a more translucent finish, which is also nice. Because the edges curve a bit and it's not completely flat, I decided to start in the flat center and work my way out, and this way the napkin won't get caught on the edges and rip as I lay it down. Once the napkin is in place, I gently smooth it down with my fingers. I also use a clear plastic sheet to press it down, which helps to smooth it out without breaking the napkin. And then I just finish off the edges, applying more Mod Podge on the edges and then smoothing it out, gently pressing down with my fingers and a clear plastic. I want the napkin to cover the sides of the plate, showing off the scallop edge, so I turn the plate over and I apply that Mod Podge on the edge, making sure the napkin completely covers the sides. And then I just apply another layer of Mod Podge right on top of the plate. And this will help to seal in the napkin and protect the surface of the plate. I also make sure to cover the sides with Mod Podge as well. I let that Mod Podge dry completely and I leave it overnight, and this gives the wrinkles and bubbles time to smooth out. Now once that's completely dry, I just get a small piece of sanding sheet and I remove the excess napkin along the edges. I also use a little emery board, and that just helps get in between those scallop edges. It actually removes the napkin nicely. For the base, I grabbed a pack of these plastic bowls from Dollar Tree. These actually have a nice detailing on them. I'll be using one, and I'm just going to paint the inside white. And I'm going to leave the outer part of the bowl unpainted because it's clear, the white shows through, and I don't have to worry about the paint chipping. Next, I'm going to glue the plate right on top, but as I was looking at it, I thought it was just too short. You couldn't really see the base, and so I decided to stack another bowl on top. So I just painted another bowl white on the inside, and then I glued the bottoms together. Then I applied some more glue, E6000, on that raised part of the rim of the bowl, and I just attached that onto the bottom of the plate. I give that time to dry and set, and I really loved how it turned out. For the next DIY, I'll be using these Dollar Tree rectangle wood slice. These are about 9 inches in length, and I'm going to be making a beautiful rustic riser. I'll be using this 1-inch square dowel. I get these at Home Depot, and I'm going to trim that so that I have 2 to just a little over 3 inches. But another option that will still work if you want to keep it simple, you can use 4 tumbling tower blocks, glue 2 pieces together, and no cutting required. I'll also be using 4 of these wooden cubes from Dollar Tree. Now it's important that they're all equal in height, or else you'll have an uneven riser. So I'm just sorting out 4 that are equal. I'm going to remove that tooth hanger. The staples are on there pretty good, so I had to use a very strong staple remover to tie it out. Next, I'm going to attach the base. So I have the bottom facing up, and I'm going to add some glue on one side of that cut square dowel. I'm going to place that close to the edge, not all the way. I do leave a little space, about 1/2 inch. I glue the other end, just making sure it's placed about the same distance from the end as the other one. I'm using Type-On multi-surface glue, but you can also use hot glue. I just like that extra repositioning time. I'm going to glue the cubes on top of the square wood close to the ends. This just gives it a little more height, and it's a nice little detail to the base. I give it about 1 minute or 2 to bond, and then I flip it over and I put some weight on top. And I just let that dry completely. I'm going to stain the riser, and I'll be using this water-based stain in the shade Special Walnut. I wipe the color on, and then I also wipe down the excess. Now you can paint or stain this any color, but I really love the rustic look of the stain. I also make sure to paint the base. Now you don't have to, but I also stain the bottom. And this rustic riser is done. Dollar Tree has a wide variation of frames, so I grabbed a variety of frames for today's video. So for the first project, I will be using this simple white 8 by 10 inch frame, about 9 tumbling tower blocks, and this wood plank, all from Dollar Tree. I'm going to be trimming the plank to the width of the frame, so I lay that on top to measure, and I trim that to about 9 5/8 of an inch. Next, I'm going to turn the frame over and I carefully remove the backing board and the glass. With some pliers, I pull out all of the metal tabs. I'll be gluing the blocks on the wood towards the bottom edge. So I add some hot glue on the narrow side of a block and I place that down horizontally on the bottom corner of the plank like so. And then I add some glue on another block and I place that vertically right on top, also gluing them to each other. And I place another block right on top of that, like so. And then I glue some more blocks just like that on the opposite side. Next, I'm just gluing more blocks on the bottom edge, gluing them on the wood and to each other. It's not going to be a perfect fit. There will be some gaps, at least for one block. But everything else, I make sure to connect them to each other. I'll be painting the wood and the blocks white. I'm just using apple barrel's white acrylic paint. And I just brush that on all over the front and the sides. But you know, you can paint this any color or even stain it. It would make a nice contrast to the white frame. Next, I'll be using some giant craft sticks. These are about 10 inches and I get these at Walmart. I'm going to trim them so that they fit nicely in the back of the frame where the backing board and glass usually sit. So I mark that and I just use scissors to trim them down. I want the wood to be a nice contrast. I'm going to stain them with a gel stain in the shade Walnut from Decorative. So I brush that on and then I wipe it down. I'll be using hot glue to glue the craft sticks on the frame, but for the strong pull, because of the material of the frame, I definitely recommend using a stronger glue like E6000, otherwise it can pop off. So I'm just placing them on the back of the frame and positioning them, spacing them out evenly. And once I have them where I want them to be, I glue them down. Now I ended up using 6 craft sticks, but if you want a tighter fit, you can add one more. So here's how the frame is looking. I really love the contrast. And finally, I apply some glue on the blocks, and then I place that on the front of the frame, making sure it's flush on the bottom. I'm going to have the stand, but you can also attach some jute cord in the back if you want it to hang. Now you can add some stenciling on the front, add some wording, and I wanted to keep this one simple, just like that. Add some flowers and greenery, and the simple DIY is done. For the next DIY, I'm putting together a cute little recipe stand, and I'll be using Dollar Tree's bamboo cutting board. I'll also be pairing it with one of their 1 by 2 inch wood pieces. I'll be trimming the wood to the width of the board, so I just mark it, grab my little miter box and saw, and I cut it down. These pieces aren't super dense, so they're actually pretty easy to cut through. I'll be staining the wood using that same combo of apple barrel's acrylic paint from the last DIY, so burnt umber will be my base color. Then I'm adding a little nutmeg brown to lighten it up and bring in some warmth, and since I'll be deepening it with a bit of black, I'll also mix in just a tiny bit of brown oxide to keep that earthy warmth. Then I just add a splash of water to thin it down so it brushes on more like a stain. For the cutting board, I'm just using a cloth to apply the stain instead of a brush, so I just work in small sections, wiping the mix on and then flipping it to a clean side of the cloth to wipe it off right away. Now, I've made something similar in the past with a smaller cutting board, and I wanted to make a larger one. Next, I apply the stain onto the cut piece of wood, and I decided to go a little darker on this one for some contrast, and I believe I added a little more black and brown oxide to the mix as well. And these dried down so beautifully. Next, I add some glue onto the 1x2 and attach it to the board, making sure it's standing upright and flush along the bottom. And then I just clamp it in place and let it dry completely. I thought it'd be nice to add some hardware to hold a phone or tablet or even a recipe book in place. And I love these metal drawer pulls from Dollar Tree. I thought the gold was just perfect and it really elevated the whole thing. It does come with screws, but I'm just using E6000 to hold it in place. I wanted to have the option to recline it back a bit, so I'm gluing one of these small chalkboard easels from Dollar Tree onto the back. I love this little hack. It's super easy, and once it's glued on, it's actually really sturdy. I use a combo of E6000 and hot glue so it holds strong right away, but it also sets permanently. The last time I made one of these, I added some stenciling, but honestly, I really love this version just the way it is. But if you want to quickly dress it up, some nice options are those Dollar Tree puffy metallic stickers. You can add one or several, and you can add a little pop of character or make it feel a bit more custom. Just reinforce it with some glue. But for me, I'm keeping it as is, simple and understated, but in a really elegant way. For the next DIY, I'll be using another one of these Dollar Tree bamboo cutting boards. I'm making a pretty little tray with gold handles, and I wanted to use a rub-on transfer again for this. They're just so pretty. I'll have that Amazon link below if you want to check it out. So here, I'm just trying to decide which part of the design I like, whether I'm going to cover the whole surface or just a small part. And I decided to go with this section right here, and so I just carefully trim it out with an X-Acto knife. I'll be using a couple of these gold metal pulls from Dollar Tree. They also have black ones too, which was such a nice find. Definitely one of those things I don't always see, so I grabbed a few while I could. So before I rub on the transfer, I just want to get an idea of placement with the pulls. There's a pretty little bird there, and I don't want to cover up its head. Now I thought it was a little too long, so I thought I'd cut out a line of the wording in the middle, just so I can bring the two main designs a little closer and avoid the handle going over it. And I'm just trimming some of the writings around the flowers, just so that it's not too boxy. And then I remove that white backing paper of the rub-on design, and I place them down on the board with the design side facing up.
Over here.
I'm using a wood stick that came up to apply the transfer on the wood, and I start out going over the whole design.
Well, I don't think you should walk with that pillow in your arm.
It doesn't move around. That was looking at the
Why don't you leave that downstairs?
There was this big empty spot on the top right,
She's
so I
trying
just
to walk
cut
up
some
the
of that
stairs
wording
with a
I
huge
trimmed off
pillow.
earlier, and I stuck a few pieces to extend it.
I didn't even know this whole time my YouTube's been.
So I just keep rubbing over the design while slowly lifting it up. If any spots didn't transfer as I pulled, I would just lay it back down, rub over that area.
Yes, and I forgot.
Keep lifting until the whole design was fully.
Yes.
Once the transfer's on, you can go over it with a.
I need to go downstairs. I went downstairs to get the vacuum.
Keep it from peeling or scratching off later.
Whoa.
Now, I would have loved to screw on the handles, but the screws that came with them are just too long for the cutting board. You could use shorter screws and add some adhesive bumpers underneath, but for this one, I'm just going for
We weren't even up here, Carter.
tray with some square dowels that I trimmed down a fit.
No, people were just talking in the
I'm
chat.
going to paint it just to add a little color and contrast. This is khaki.
Yeah, there's 12 people.
Very neutral color, but I could definitely see this looking great in bolder colors too.
I know, you look really sexy.
Once the paint has dried, I glue it right
Thanks.
in about 1/4 of an inch from the edge.
That's pretty.
Look at my earrings. They look like jellyfishes.
E6000 for a super strong hold. And I try to place that right above where I place the dowels.
Aw, that's cute.
And this one is all done. Let me know what you think.
Thank you. Thank you, little lady.
Okay, are you happy now? Remember when my dad used to say, "Are you finally happy?" When he would give you something, he'd say, "Well, are you finally happy now?"
He's a jerk. He wasn't my dad either.
Wow, my mom said that my dad was a jerk and he wasn't her dad.
Do you remember what he did to me?
What, my dad?
My dad.
Oh, yeah.
He's not my
I
dad.
could have also
No, I know he's not your dad. I'm talking about my dad.
turned the brush this focus
Oh.
how it
I'm talking about Thomas Jorgensen.
over the frames. I didn't really like the curve.
Did you-
Oh.
did you-
Oh.
I'm talking about when he used to buy us stuff and then he would say, "Are you finally happy?" after you would buy it.
I would only apply
I
about 1
get
to 2
it.
coats since the frame is already
No, Thomas Jorgensen, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And do you know who my brother is?
Once the paint has dried, I turn the frames over.
Sean Thomas.
Oh, well, that, yeah.
They're pretty
That's my brother.
Come around until the sides look as flush as possible. But one tip is to just double check before purchasing. I didn't think about that. I'll be using a combination of E6000 and
Yeah, my mom said she hasn't had a towel in 2 or 3 days because she didn't want to be rude and ask for one.
hold them together for a few minutes.
You guys don't forget to go over to Plumper Pass. My video came out today. Go look at plumperpass.com.
But you can place some small blocks
Plumper
on the sides
Pass.
to give it some grip. No, you can't stop
And go look it up.
This is so pretty, just like that. But I'll be fine.
And you can see my video.
With the wallpaper on the glass. I got the
She said she's been using a wash rag.
Dollar Tree also had some nice wallpaper as well. So I'm just measuring.
Does your mom do stuff like that?
and cut it out. Since I'll be placing these on top of the
Like
glass,
you'll find out she's been using like a wash rag as a
so
towel.
placed over the glass, I just carefully peel out a few inches of that white backing paper. It is very
Okay, well,
sticky
Carter
and the
can't
wallpaper
answer
can
me,
rip if I'm not
so-
careful. So
Okay, I gotta go get a vacuum and then I'm gonna get the laundry.
And then I just stick that on the edge of the glass, and then I slowly peel out the backing paper, smoothing the wallpaper down. I'm also using a little plastic scraper to smooth it out as I'm pulling out the white backing paper, and this will help prevent any bumps from forming. And once that's completely done, I continue to go over that with a plastic scraper. I get these at Dollar Tree. They're very similar to the Cricut one, but a fraction of the cost. So I just continue applying the wallpaper to the remaining of the glass.
Show everybody how cute you are.
Completely
Oh,
these plastic frames are a bit
look at Piper on the camera. Looks so cute.
some more support. I'll be gluing
Looks
these
like a
down
little
with
fatty.
I get these on Amazon, and I'll be using a
A
combination.
little fatty
of
and a
two
little
surfaces to keep them in
cutie.
place. Once I apply the glue, I hold the bamboo sticks down for about a minute to give that hot glue some time to dry and harden. I also use a square dowel to hold it down evenly while it dries. And then I just place the glass with the wallpaper back on the frames, as well as the backing board, and then I just push down those metal tabs to secure it in place.
Ooh,
Thank you for
kind
joining
of
us
so
for this
dry.
video. Can you make sure to give it a thumbs up? Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support is so appreciated. I would also love to hear your thoughts. in the
Hi.
comments below about what DIY
The clothes are so dry.
And with that,
And they don't smell at all like mold or anything anymore. Woo! You're a genius.
Oh shoot.
Okay, Kai's a genius.
project, I'll be using 3 of Dollar Tree's 60
He fixed it.
and 2 of the spare ones. I'm going to stain them with this.
I'm folding my daughter's clothes, so if you guys see how small they are,
You can definitely stain or paint them with
they're my
whatever you
daughter's.
prefer. Now this stain goes on really smoothly with a brush.
I'm going to start this live over, you guys,
It has poly in it. It also
because
stains
the
it.
whole beginning of it is stupid.